Greetings and peace. This is Dr. Lawrence Brown with another episode of Interfaith Issues. I'm going to be speaking today as if I am interviewing myself. I have received a number of questions from a variety of people over time, and I thought that it would be fun for me, hopefully interesting to you, to hear me answer some of these questions. So, let us begin. In one of the earlier episodes, I described the pathway by which I became Muslim. I have been asked, one of the questions I've been asked is, what happened to me after I became Muslim? Did I encounter any difficulties? Well, I think it's very difficult for anybody to make such a radical change in their life, especially in the West, to become Muslim and not encounter difficulties. I remember that initially I had an overwhelming feeling of peace and contentment. And in a very large way, that feeling has never left me. But my worldly life was thrown into turmoil. My parents could not understand my choice. My brother had become Muslim before me, and he is actually the one who introduced me to Islam. And we are the only two children in the family, just my brother and myself. So when I became Muslim, my parents felt like they had lost their only other child to Islam. Now, my parents, during my time with them, were never practicing Christians. But all the same, they saw my conversion as disruptive to their lives. And I think it was. It is almost impossible to convert to Islam or to make as large a change as a person makes when you change religions without having it be disruptive to some degree. So I admit, I was a little bit like the reformed smoker. I couldn't talk about anything else. I was probably a little bit overbearing in my opinions, but all the same, in very short order, my friends deserted me. My parents did not want to have any contact with either my brother or myself. I remember one time we actually received a message where we were told by them, do not visit, do not call, do not write, do not want a postcard, email, nothing. They did not want any contact from us whatsoever. So I was cut off from friends, I was cut off from family. I was treated differently at work. What is now my ex-wife became my ex-wife. She divorced me, and she took the children. I lost, of course, in the process, I lost my house, I lost my property, I lost my car. You know, it sort of sounds almost like a country song, because I also lost my dog. But no, this is not one of those cases where I lost my wife and my dog, and gee, I really miss my dog. No. You know, that's good for a country song, but it's not good for reality. The fact of the matter was that it was very traumatic. And I remember as I was going through all of this, I went from living on a country estate. We had a couple of acres. I don't know if you could call it an estate, but we had a couple of acres with a very large house and a second guest house, not a guest room, a guest house on the property. And I went from living in that to living in a little rent-by-the-week studio apartment that when you walked to it up the stairwell or in the elevator, it reeked of urine, to give you an idea of the quality of people living there. And not only living in this miserable little studio apartment, but sharing it with another brother who was getting divorced and who was on hard times. And the funny thing about it was I remember that those were some of the happiest days of my life. I remember looking around and thinking, what's wrong with me? I mean, in the movies, when you get divorced, you become dysfunctional. You start punching holes in walls and causing deliberate accidents with your car, and you just become dysfunctional. But I was happy. As a matter of fact, as I said, it was some of the happiest days in my life. And it was then that I remember, looking back on it, that before I became Muslim, I had prayed a prayer called the istikhara prayer, the guidance prayer. And in this prayer, we ask God, we ask Allah to choose for us, to guide us to what He knows to be best for us and to bring it to pass, and to make us pleased with it. And it was then that I realized the mercy of our Creator when He answers a prayer, how completely He answers it. Because He had chosen for me what He knew to be best for me in answer to this prayer. Not only that, but as much as I felt a dislike for what was happening, He had made me happy with it in a way that I almost could not understand. Truly, our Creator speaks the truth, and we are promised in this religion that you do not give up anything for the pleasure of Allah except that He replaces it with that which is better. When I became Muslim, I became divorced. Allah gave me another wife. I lost my children to custody in the first family. Allah gave me a new child and a new family. Eventually, I was squeezed out of my job because of the anti-Islamic, anti-Muslim prejudices in the military, which is where I worked. I felt I could not continue because of the prejudices that I was experiencing from my co-workers. I gave up my job. Allah gave me a better job, times and times better. I lost my house to the divorce. Allah gave me a home in the holy city of Medina. I lost my wealth. Allah replaced it and multiplied it. I cannot think of anything I lost except that Allah replaced it with what He knew to be better. I didn't lose my parents forever. Eventually, we were able to talk again. And in a way, I feel our relationship is better now than it ever was before. So I think what I can say is, for a person who considers making this change, nobody gives up anything for the pleasure of Allah except that Allah will give you what is better. That doesn't mean that it won't be hard. It doesn't mean that it will be to your liking, at least maybe not initially. There may be a period of trial, a period of test, a period you have to get through before you find the benefit. But when you do find the benefit, subhanAllah, you will realize the completeness of the mercy of our Creator. Another question that people ask, they like to hear an answer to, is, well, what does Islam mean to you? I can tell what I have found Islam to be. I have found Islam to be a religion of modesty and humility. It's a religion of peace and submission, submission to God, but also submission in a general sense, submission to those who know better. You know, I grew up in the West, where we were raised on the concept of questioning authority. Question everything. It's a popular saying. But the fact of the matter is it's destructive. We have authority figures for a reason. They are people of greater knowledge or greater experience, or they have been empowered to enforce certain regulations. And if you are constantly questioning them or defying them, it will be hard on you, hard on them, and hard on all of society. So I found Islam to be a religion that put things in order. As an individual, within a family, within a society, within a country, and as a world. I found Islam is a religion of peace. This does not mean that Muslims are necessarily pacifist. It does not mean that if you go and attack a Muslim, he will not defend himself. Of a certainty, he or she should, because everybody has the right to defend themselves. But it does mean that I found Islam to be a religion of peace. Before Islam, I didn't have peace in my life. I cannot remember ever having peace in my life until Islam. After Islam, I found peace in practically everything I did. Before Islam, I was fascinated with certain things. I was interested in knives. I was interested in guns. I used to play paintball. Look, I was in the military. It's something that we did. It's something in the West that we enjoyed. I watched the Rambo movies, the Commando movies, the James Bond movies. I lived that life. I dreamed those dreams. But something happened to me after I became Muslim that I can't explain, except to say I simply lost interest in all of those things. I sold or gave away my guns. The same thing with my hunting knives and my this and that knives. Something entered my heart to where I did not even like to see a knife with a tip to it. You go to my kitchen and you will find two things. You will find my wife annoyed at me because of the second thing, which is that I've taken all the kitchen knives and broken the tips off of them. I honestly cannot understand the need for a tip to a kitchen knife. Nobody ever uses it, and it is only something that can cause harm. In my transition from a relatively unordered, somewhat paranoid life to a life of peace, things like this became visible to me that I never saw before. And what I feel is what I am now, a man at peace with himself, at peace with the people around me, at peace with society at large.